Você, você, você. Você, você, você. I had the privilege of working on accessibility over this last year, and 2023 will always be special to me because of this work. I say privilege because the work, the encounters, the discussions, the shared lived experiences that I got to listen to, embrace, and really come to understand revealed for me just how much we live our lives in bubbles. And don't get me wrong, I like living in my little bubble from the perspective of not being influenced by media and not being influenced by societal labels and things of that nature. That's when I enjoy living in bubbles. What I don't want to do is live in bubbles and really not come to appreciate segments of society that needs our attention. So needless to say, the work on accessibility was very enlightening for me. And it was enlightening to the extent where I truly honor the magnitude of growth and awareness I got from the experience. And if all of you who've been listening to me for all this time knows that I'm all about growth, I'm all about up-leveling, I'm all about changing our lives and our perspectives. So let's kickstart this. If you have ever played the birthday party games, pin the tail on the donkey, or attempted to hit a piñata, then you would have been given the opportunity to understand what full sight loss is like, albeit in a fun way. Nevertheless, despite the fun ambiance of how we did it, I can still remember the sensory impact the blindfold produced for me. Immediately you felt off balance, especially so when you were spun around and around and around to increase the level of difficulty and decrease the level of accuracy. Your hearing and your touch heightened in their importance. You are suddenly sensitive to everything around you, people around you. And it just heightened the importance of those other sensory capability. Touching gave a sense of security, and hearing made you feel a sense of direction. And these moments at birthday parties, they didn't last long, and they ended in squeals of laughter and joy as the blindfold came off to reveal where you placed the pin, which sometimes was ridiculously placed, or to what degree you hit the piñata, and as you opened your eyes and the blindfold came off, was greeted with candy at your feet to grab in a delightful frenzy because everybody there, all the kids were grabbing at that point and you needed to jump in. And as children, we recovered from the sensory experience rather quickly. What we never focused on, however, was just how vulnerable we were or felt, and the trust that we had to give to everyone around us in even playing the game. Now imagine that as your full-time living experience, your full-time living existence. So here's the thing. Earlier this year in April 2023, my podcast episode, An Accessible World featuring Linda Hunt, aired. And the learnings that came out of that interview fueled my desire to learn more, fueled my ambitions to get more involved, which is what I was doing in my engagement role to explore accessibility, barriers, and gaps. And that role was specific to the digital world. Going back to the interview with Linda Hunt, at one point she schooled me on the fact that in wearing glasses, I had made my way into the sight or vision loss community. And it was an eye-opener for me. And that community, I've since learned, is nationally represented in the United States by the National Federation of the Blind. And you're going to start to hear the acronyms because most of them are referred by their acronyms, which is NFB for that particular organization. Then you have the American Foundation for the Blind, AFB. And in Canada, it's represented by the Canadian National Institute of the Blind, CNIB. Now, with Arrays of Living being a globally assessed podcast, It's obviously important to acknowledge that each major country has similar representation. For example, in the United Kingdom, they have the Royal National Institute of Blind People, RNIB. Germany has the German Federation of the Blind and Partially Sighted, DBSV. India has the National Association for the Blind, NAB. And while I can't list them all, you get the point that representation exists with at least one major organization. And in most cases, that major organization is followed by many others. And I just want to be absolutely clear for clarity. Blindness is considered a disability that is framed around the proper language of partial or full sight or vision loss. The party games I previously mentioned aimed at blocking all possibility of sight for the players, essentially simulating blindness. This realization that everyone wearing glasses factor into the blind community was a humbling realization, and I marveled at the truth of it, and more so at the distorted, illusionary lives we lead thinking different. You have to marvel at that. Here is the bigger reality to embrace. There really is no us and them, and we tend to look at things that way. But there really is no us and them. Because if you recall and remember the universal law of divine oneness, according to that law, we are all connected. And while this podcast today is not about the morphogenic field or divine oneness specifically, you can understand it merits to know that they have a bearing in our everyday life. And how we treat one person is how we treat everyone. Yes, I wear glasses, and I know the frustration of misplacing them when I need to read or watch something. I know the blurriness around the words or the images not having my glasses on. I also know the comfort I feel at not having to wear them 24/7, especially when I'm driving or walking about city streets. Now, before speaking with Linda Hunt, I had bought into the illusion that the sight or vision loss community was separate from me. And I now can appreciate the audacity of that truth. How dare me think that? But I did. And I've since come to accept and delight in the fact of being included in that community, because I can now air my grievances at many things that frustrate me just wearing glasses. So you can imagine what it would be like with full sight loss or higher up in my sight loss capability. And here's the greater reality that we have to come to understand. And Linda Hunt called this out as well in that interview, is the fact that as we age, most of us will find ourselves in one or more of the disability group.
If you're looking to advertise with Jenn Drakes, send us an email at jen@youareworthmore.co. Or you can help us by addressing the things that you face by sending us some inclusivity topic ideas.
And in this case, specific to this podcast, our focus is on sight or vision loss. So if you wear glasses and go through life seeing yourself as arm's length from this community, change your perspective. And you know my mantra, change your perspective to change your life. And the importance of this is about inclusion and acceptance. It's about taking a vested interest in how this community is treated and to what degree they truly have accessibility. I think we mar the community based on full sight or vision loss to complete blindness. But it's as if we can come to understand that much like autism, there's a spectrum to sight or vision loss. Eyeglasses places you on the spectrum, and your prescription or ophthalmology denotes where on the spectrum you land. On the higher end of that spectrum, more services and accommodations will be needed. I think we can understand that and appreciate that. And our sensitivity to that may be low when we fail to see the spectrum of community coverage that's around us. In a blindfold, how do you navigate the world around you? Whether it's digital or non-digital, can you now appreciate the difficulty that people on the higher spectrum face, if I'm wearing glasses and I don't have to wear mine 24/7 and I'm having difficulty with things, imagine full sight loss or on the higher spectrum, even if it's partial, and the difficulty that can be faced by those. So I'm here to call out because my discussions was about digital world. And if you are a software developer, can you understand that applications should seamlessly incorporate functionality for those on the sight or vision loss spectrum? And I call out seamlessly, not as an afterthought. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, provide a global standard for making websites and web applications accessible to people with disabilities, including those facing visual barriers. Now, many countries have adopted or adapted WCAG. What is important to recognize and appreciate is that advocacy is needed. Even as I think about WCAG, and I tried to get the answer in my research and I didn't find it, is to what degree those in the community and higher on the spectrum played a part in the guidelines. We need it related. Advocacy is needed, and it is needed to be related to education, services, accommodations, communication, technology, enablement, time sensitivity, family dynamics, and the list goes on. I want to focus on time sensitivity in that list because those on the higher spectrum of sight loss cannot be expected to action, respond to, or arrive somewhere as quickly as those having their sight. And yet that expectation seems to be there. More time is needed. And this should be factored into our planning and our expectations if we are truly aspiring to achieve equity and societal inclusion of everyone. Accessibility, again, I say, should be seamless within our infrastructures, our technologies, our planning, our strategies, and on we go. Also in that list, I want to focus on family dynamic. We tend to discount those on the higher spectrum of sight loss, and that means it rarely enters our minds that they are someone's daughter or son, someone's spouse or partner, someone's mother or father. And because of that short-sighted lens, we fail to appreciate they can hold the role of caregiver, of nurturer. And when they do, what is in place to help them navigate paperwork, decisions that have to be made, and loving guidance for those in that person's time of need? It isn't always those with disability that have the need. Sometimes it's their loved ones, and they step into the caregiving role, and they need support when in that role. They need help. This podcast is not for solutioning. It is about bringing awareness, though, of gaps that still exist, flawed perspectives or flawed perspectives. And it's here to drive advocacy for greater inclusivity in the things that we prepare, in the things we build, in the things we create, in the platforms we use. I took the time to dialogue with those having the lived experiences. And as I said, starting out, I was impacted by what I learned, how much I learned, and to what degree my appreciation was missing. And it wasn't missing for lack of care. It was missing for lack of focus. Even when I myself get frustrated trying to read small print, why do we even have it on a bottom? What bother? I can't read it. Put a QR code that I can go to and figure out what you're trying to tell me in that small print. When I can't configure a preference for larger font sizes as my default and have it permeate to certain applications and things that I do. The expectation that as we move into the sight loss community, we must transition to dependent living rather than independent living is flawed. Because to me, it seems fair to surmise that if accessibility is made seamless, independent living, and I'm going to call it my own independent living, would be extended longer. And it would be also extended longer for many others. If we're not willing to advocate for strangers, then do so for yourself, your parents, or grandparents. Lessen their burdens, remove their frustrations, restore their living state independence. Let me wrap up this by saying, care enough to focus on inclusivity of all within our communities. You have been listening to an Unveils of Living podcast episode. And I ask you to remember that we grow by you sharing the love. Recommend this podcast to your friends and family.
Welcome back, everyone, to Unveils of Living. You just listened to episode 9 of season 4, Living with Sight Loss. Make sure to follow Jenn Drakes on all social media platforms so you don't miss out on the next episode. Also, join our Catalytic Club Discord to get exclusive news about Jenn Drakes. Thank you for listening.